For almost 20 years, World of Warcraft has quietly relied on something the game was never truly designed around. Add-ons. Boss warnings and entire encounter solutions built outside the game itself. And over time, something subtle happened. The game stopped teaching players what to do, and add-ons started doing it instead. Now Blizzard is beginning to pull some of that power back. And even though that certainly feels bad for a lot of players right now, which includes me, just so it's said, it might be one of the most important changes the game can make for its long-term future. In recent years, when you play World of Warcraft at a higher level, a huge part of the game is not actually being shown in the game. It's happening in your UI. An air horn sound in your headphones, a text warning telling you which mechanic is happening, and instructions on how to react before you've even processed the screen. And to be honest, I was part of that too. I used weak auras for all kinds of things. Did I really need all of them? Probably not. But when those tools exist and everyone else is using them, you naturally feel pushed towards doing the same. Over time, we reached a place where being good at high-end WoW wasn't just about understanding your class or the encounter, it was about building the perfect UI, tracking the right information, filtering the noise, and managing the chaos that was going on your screen. That became part of the skill ceiling, and for years we made that work. We even made it fun. But if you step back for a moment, in what other game would this design actually make sense? Eventually, it reached a point where Blizzard had to design what players started calling weak aura bosses. Encounters built with the assumption that everyone was using third-party tools just to understand them. In other words, you didn't just benefit from add-ons, you practically needed them to win. And that leads to the real point I want to talk about. There's a saying, don't know if it's factually true, but it feels believable. World of Warcraft doesn't get new players. It gets returning players. And honestly, if that is true, it's not very hard to understand why. Have you ever stopped to think about what it must feel like to start World of Warcraft for the very first time today? I have, and honestly, I can't imagine how overwhelming it must feel. Getting kicked from a leveling dungeon because you picked a class you thought looked cool, maybe something that turns into a bear. While other players are already expecting perfect interrupts, perfect routing, perfect efficiency. Being told you're doing it wrong before you even understand what right looks like. And on top of all of that, realizing that a huge part of learning the game isn't inside the game at all. It's downloading third-party tools just to keep up. Look, I've grown used to this myself. After more than a decade of playing, it just feels normal. But that's exactly the problem. Because if World of Warcraft is going to stay healthy, if we want it to keep being good in the future, it needs new players. We can't rely on returning ones. Because if the audience slowly shrinks to only long-time veterans, the game doesn't just feel smaller, it eventually becomes harder to support, harder to grow, and easier to fade away. I understand why the current changes feel uncomfortable. Losing tools we relied on for years never feels good. Maybe it would have been easier if Blizzard had taken smaller steps, changing things gradually over time instead of all at once. But at the same time, it's hard to escape the feeling that the add-on dependency we had simply wasn't sustainable in the long run. Most of us will probably adapt to new UI systems faster than we think. And maybe, just maybe, one reason Blizzard is doing this is so they can design encounters that are clearer, healthier, and more intuitive from the start. Fights that don't require outside tools to understand. I could be wrong about that, but even if I am, one thing still remains true. World of Warcraft needs new players to survive. Not just the ones who come back, but the ones who are starting for the very first time. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate all the support this past week, the comments, the subscriptions, all of it. I'd love to have you around, and I'll see you in the next one.